All right. Can you believe it that there's only a few precious hours left in the 2019 college football regular season? I see Arizona State battling for the Territorial Cup, and Cal and UCLA, and a few group of 5 games left to play out far west. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, here on Rivalry Week. Hopefully you've joined us throughout the week as we have previewed the big matchups and, of course, analyzed the big games today, and we will get to more. More importantly, I hope that you've had a tremendous holiday weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you who have not joined us in the last few days. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great time of food and football and, more importantly, family. I think I've hit my quotas on more importantly's for the call-in show tonight. Again, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. For you who have yet to join us or join us on a regular basis and really lock in, that's what we invite you to do. I will take calls in just a second. Thank you so much for the call. Whoever's calling in right now, just call on back in a few minutes. I will remind you to like the video. That means so much. Comments in the section right there on YouTube, the live chat, but also comment to the video, subscribe, and, of course, share the videos out on social media. So you've got a social media presence that I don't have. That means you can help us build the channel and show some appreciation in that way. Also, the Super Chat is on. The Super Chat is a way that you can contribute financially. Obviously, this won't happen long-term without revenue. All right, Rivalry Week. What did we learn today? Let's dive into the scores and let's dive into what has transpired over the last 12 to 13 hours that will continue to shape the college football weekend. And somebody's calling in right now. Maybe it's the first caller calling back. Sure. They have waited for the intro. All right. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yeah, it's George.
Hey, George.
Gator George.
Congratulations to your Gators.
I'm ready to anoint LSU national champion. Are you?
Oh, did they play? Did they play Ohio State today? Did they play Clemson?
LSU.
Did they play Clemson?
Whatever. They're just going to embarrass them.
They're going to embarrass Ohio State and Clemson. LSU.
Yes.
Okay.
Nobody can touch the Southeastern Conference, man.
Really?
Everybody's dad. Yeah, everybody calls us daddy when they're private. They go, "Daddy, please don't hurt us."
Yeah, that's not what I've witnessed the last several seasons. Really, that's not even when it was overhyped what I was witnessing. It is the best conference. It is the best conference, but the best team doesn't always come from the best conference. And it's not the best conference by a whole lot.
Michigan showed us what a joke that conference is today.
Wait a minute. Michigan was playing Ohio State, just like we could say Texas A&M was showing what a joke the SEC is. That we can work this both ways. It's an easy argument for me to make.
Damn, Mark, you're hardcore.
Yes, the SEC is the best conference, George. Yes, it is, and LSU might be the best team. But if they prove in the next month to be the best team, they're the best team by not a whole lot. They're really good. They're really good.
I was not prepared for such an eloquent rebuttal.
Really?
Right. We're gonna have to watch. We're gonna have to watch for a couple weeks and see just how this all settles out.
Well, we will see. No more poignant words have been stated. Yes, we will wait and see what happens.
Not since Abraham Lincoln, at least.
You who?
Not since Abraham Lincoln.
Yes,
four years ago.
Yes, so those were slightly more important words.
All right. So, how impressed were you with the Gators tonight?
Considering I just saw a score, and they played a pretty bad Florida State team that's working with an interim coach. Sure, I was impressed that I am going to go back and watch the condensed version of the game to see what they accomplished. But they beat Florida State similar to what they've beaten them the last couple of years. It's about what I expected. I had you covering 17.5 points in my predictions.
I can't believe Florida can't play for the national title. I hate the system, whatever is going on. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, we would have to add a few more slots for you, George.
Why can't the whole season just be a playoff?
Then we would have eliminated you about 5 weeks into it.
We could have a 128-team playoff lasting 16 weeks.
Yeah, that would be a short season for a few teams. Awfully short.
Yeah. Damn. All right. Hey, Duke humiliated Miami. I'm not talking to Miami again until 2024. I'm done with them.
George, it's interesting that you bring that up. I had my boy who makes my thumbnails for the videos, I had him create one concerning Miami. I'm going to address the pathetic Miami football program and that situation there.
Right.
I'm not going to make a whole lot of people happy, but I'm going to just tell it like it is.
Here's a picture of Miami. You're standing in an exit begging for change, and you have change, from the cars going by.
Yes.
And you have a sign around your neck that says, I cheer for Miami. I'm going to kill myself. Poor guys. I feel so sorry for them. I feel they've been abandoned by the administration. Hey, listen, Florida's spending $2 billion on capital improvements in the next 20 years, and Miami is like spending zero. They're done. They're finished. They're through. You have to have a support staff of recruiters and stuff. They just don't have the money.
And that might be the problem. I can only address what's on the field and the decisions that are made to hire less than capable coaches.
All right. Before we go, who was the big winner of the day? Was it Auburn or who? Who was the big winner today?
In terms of showing where the football program stands and in regards to rivalry games, I think that Auburn was. That's a good selection right there. I think that Auburn was the winner of the day. But, of course, toward the playoff and the championship, Oklahoma, in making a very strong statement against Oklahoma State on the road as an 18-point winner, that was a strong statement.
Right.
That was big for them. Wisconsin would be the big. If there was just one big winner today, yes, Wisconsin would be the big winner of the day.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a chance does Wisconsin have of beating Ohio State?
I'll give them about a 20 to 25% chance of winning the game.
Okay. All right. So that would be on a scale of 1 to 10. That would be like a 2.5.
Yeah, we'll give them a 2.5.
Wow. Well, so Ohio State's going to be there, it looks like.
I think I'm giving the Badgers a pretty substantial chance. But, yes, Ohio State should win that game. They beat them 38-7 about a month ago, 6 weeks ago.
All right. The story of the national championship game this year will be Ohio State begs LSU, please quit hurting us, Daddy. Please quit beating us. Because LSU is going to stomp Ohio State into the dirt. That's what I say.
Define stomp for me.
42-28.
42-28. 42-31. That's a stomping?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hey, a win by 1 point would be a stomping at this point. Ohio State looks invincible. But I think really LSU looks kind of invincible.
They did tonight.
My God, what's going on in Louisiana? What do they have in their water down there? What the hell's going on?
I don't think we want to know what they have in their water.
Fuck. Ed Orgeron is like Rain Man, apparently. Him and Ryan Day. Orgeron against Day. Battle number 1.
It's this offensive guru that they signed and brought over from the Saints. That's the guy we can credit. All right, George, more calls are coming in.
Look, gotta go.
Thanks, George.
You're breaking up again here.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline.
All right.
The call will start at
On to call number 2, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark, it's DeAndre. How you doing?
Hey, DeAndre, I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Good. Man, I had left to go out to work, and I was watching that Alabama-Auburn game. I wish I would have stayed around a few more minutes. Boy, that game was amazing, wasn't it?
It was a good game. Good ball game. I really locked in on the second half. Tremendous game. Yeah. I was glad I took Auburn.
Yeah, I mean,
If people would lock in on my picks, I took Auburn straight, and hopefully some people cashed in on that.
yeah, I didn't bet today. Or did I? I think I took Duke and Miami straight up. I don't know so much gambling, man. I even gambled on hockey the other day. But that's not here or there. But I have a guy that he does hockey games.
You're not going to pick on Miami, are you?
Well, I'm gonna pick on Florida State too.
Okay.
And let me check the. I don't get Florida State. I understand that they want to get rid of Willie Taggart, but you got what 16 days before signing day, right?
Yes.
Where's the head coach that you got to keep these recruits to stay at Florida State? Hey, you just set yourself back 2 or 3 more years. And another team I'm going to talk about, that sorry-ass Michigan. That Michigan, every big game, I know everybody said, well, they beat Notre Dame. I don't know if Notre Dame beat Stanford. I saw them struggling with them. But Notre Dame struggled with Virginia Tech with their third-string quarterback in the game. So how can that be a great program? I mean, that'd be a big win. But Miami's just pathetic. I mean, matter of fact, I was up there picking up some guys from Miami during the Duke-Durham game, because Duke was like about 45 minutes away from my house. And they was asking me, like, what is wrong with us? I said, I've been telling everybody on YouTube, the problem with Miami, until they fix their offensive line, they're not going to be any good. You hear them talk, this go for Miami players and Miami fans. They will sit up there and say, we're going to blow this team out, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. This ain't 1991, this ain't 2001. People are not scared of you when they walk on the field with you. Those days are over that you have more talent than everybody that you say and that you walk on the field with. Duke has beat Miami, if I'm not mistaken, the last 3 years. And Duke should have nowhere the talent that Miami has. And all I heard, Kim, Zoe, MDTV say, it's a play call under Rick. I said, yeah, but y'all got to fix your offensive line. I finally heard Kim admit to it, because I heard somebody ask him about Justin Flo. And I was like, I need to get the offensive lineman in there, man. That offensive line is awful. The guy at left tackle wasn't even recruited by Clemson to South Carolina, and he lives like an hour away from University of South Carolina campus. This only offer outside of Miami was Citadel. I don't know why they don't get it, and I don't know why the coaches don't get it. That they got to fix that offensive line. They got to do something to get some recruits in there at the offensive line, and I think Miami will be okay.
I'm going to make 2 statements here in regards to people's perception on much of this. And I don't want people to take it to an extreme, because sometimes you make statements on here and then people take it out of context and take it to an extreme. Coaching in college athletics is obviously extremely, extremely important. And coaching in college football, hiring the right coach, and then that head coach hiring the right coordinators and coaching staff is vital, is huge. We see it all the time. Different coaches taking over different programs, same personnel, and they win at a higher level, or the program deteriorates. Same personnel. Play calling, on the other hand, I think it's important. Certainly, you want an edge. You want a play caller who understands concepts, who understands what the defense is giving them, who understands what their personnel can do and what they can't do, and can put it all together. to have an approach that makes sense for their team in particular and for the flow of the game. And it has a feel for it, and it has strategy, and just had a lot of brains toward play calling. But play calling is overrated. Everybody points to play calling as being when I say every, obviously I'm exaggerating. A lot of people, when their team loses, blame play calling. Like, because the plays don't work, because they're not executed correctly, that suddenly there were bad plays, but the same plays work for other teams. I think play calling by fan bases is totally overrated. Not that it's not important.
Right.
It's important. It's overrated.
Right. I give you a perfect example. The year that Clemson lost to Pitt, Dabo calls what is it called? A fourth from weather Gallman, and he got stopped. If it worked, he's brilliant. If it don't work, he's off. But they didn't execute that play, just like against South Carolina today, where they went for it on fourth and goal before they ran away with it. It's like they didn't execute. If you watch that play, Simpson didn't block the guy on that side. He just looked at him. He was got right past him. So yeah, I get what you're saying. It's about execution.
Minnesota a few weeks ago beat Penn State, and people raved about the play calling. And I even watched the game thinking the same thing. This is a tremendous game plan that Minnesota has. Well, the same offensive coordinator and the same play caller are calling plays this afternoon against Wisconsin, and they couldn't do a damn thing because they couldn't block them.
Right. Yeah. And so, I'll leave Miami. I'll leave all the losing teams alone. Let me ask you this. What do you think about that Wisconsin Ohio State game? Did Wisconsin learn enough to improve against Ohio State?
I would expect them to play much better in this game. I would expect it to be much closer. I think that's common history among quality opponents, that the second matchup is typically closer if the first one's a blowout. Obviously, it's not going to be at Ohio Stadium. It's going to be on a neutral field. The last time those two teams played, and I think the talent gap is similar. Ohio State was clearly the better team, but Wisconsin had enough grit on defense and enough technique on defense and front seven ability to keep it within a score, and that's what it was. I'm not saying that Ohio State only wins by a score, but the game's going to be closer than it was the first time around.
Now, I know what you're about to tell me. You can't predict what somebody else is going to do.
Yep.
But let me ask you.
Sure.
This. What happens if Wisconsin beats Ohio State?
What's the playoffs selection committee going to do?
Yeah, I know you say you can't predict, but what if you had to be a guessing man or a betting man on that?
Well, I'll still take those questions, of course. That's why I'm here. I'll still take those questions. I'm just emphasizing that for me to try to predict what somebody else is going to select. So Ohio State would still have such a better resume than Wisconsin if they're thinking about some kind of head-to-head decision between those two teams. Ohio State would still have a win against Wisconsin, a dominant win, and unless Wisconsin just buried them 42-7, something similar to what Ohio State did to them by 31 points, they would have a split. Plus, Ohio State would have a much better resume overall and still only one loss. So I would think even with the Big Ten championship in play, and the committee has shown us in the last 3 years that the championships are apparently counted, but they don't mean as much as we thought when this whole thing started in 2014. I would expect them to still select Ohio State at least over Wisconsin.
Well, what I'm saying is, like Utah and Oklahoma is 6 and 7. Let's say Ohio State loses to Wisconsin. Do you think if Utah and Oklahoma win out, would that be enough to push them over into the top 4? Or will you think they just drop Ohio State down to 4 and keep it like that?
I think if Utah and Oklahoma are impressive, that could certainly happen. If they're impressive.
Yeah. Who's somebody else I was looking at? Oh man, I forgot what I was about to ask you about. Oh, what? I've been listening to a lot of people, some LSU fans and all this other stuff. I don't think you bring a lot of LSU people on your network, but I think there's a conspiracy. I didn't know this until this happened last year. Alabama wanted to go to the Orange Bowl instead of the Cotton Bowl because they didn't want all the Oklahoma fans dominating the Dallas landscape. But my point that I'm about to bring up, I think I might have asked you this the other day. Don't you feel like they want to put Ohio State at one? Because Ohio State's going to go over to the Fiesta Bowl and maybe have Utah, and then you have two Southern teams at the Peach Bowl, and that will sell more money. Because that's why I was telling some of the LSU fans. I said I think that's what they're trying to do. As long as you get in the top four, it don't really matter outside of what colors you're going to wear. You're going to have to play on the field no matter where you go. But I think that's what it's about. I don't think it's the fact that Ohio State is that much better than LSU. I think that they're trying to get them to a position where they can best sell tickets. Because last year, Clemson and Alabama didn't sell very well. And that's also because it was always out there on the West Coast. But I think that's what they're trying to do.
Well, certainly certain fan bases, including Ohio State, have proven that they will go anywhere. So there's not a lot of them, but Ohio State fans will go anywhere. They've certainly gone to the Fiesta Bowl a zillion times over the last 15 years and have traveled and filled the stadium. And, of course, Utah's close by. That would be a good travel situation for Utah fans to be able to make it. And, then you would have a whole glut of fans that would be able to drive to Atlanta. Let's say if it was Clemson and LSU, their fan bases. I know that those are long drives from Louisiana and, well, not so much from South Carolina.
2 hours.
But they've got a lot of fans in the region as well, not just in Louisiana. I don't know. In looking at the playoff attendance, that there's been an issue, though, with selling out stadiums. They had Florida State and Oregon play at the Rose Bowl, and that's thousands and thousands and thousands of miles for both of them. We could go year by year to see who played where, but I don't think that that's been an issue, selling out the stadiums for the playoff games. I don't know. Somebody can correct me on that. I don't really keep track of that kind of stuff, but I don't think it's been an issue.
Yeah, but I was just looking at the fact that if I was Ohio State, would you want to play Clemson in Ohio and Atlanta, and you have to go? The Clemson fans only have to travel 2 hours, where your fans might have to come down for about 12 hours away. I'm just using that as an example. I mean, I really don't know, but it was just something that I came across that I think is factoring into this to the playoff selection committee.
If I was Ohio State, I would just rather play Utah than Clemson. Period.
Yeah, that's what the people on Fox were saying. Nobody wants to be two, or everybody wants to be one. Because a guy from the LSU station, he was talking about it. He said, "Yeah, you really don't want to be number two and have to play Clemson." And I think Clemson matches up better with LSU than they do Ohio State. Personally, I think they have a better chance against LSU than they do Ohio State. I think the way Clemson plays defense and the lack of defense. I know LSU put on a show today and only held what was the final score, 54-7. But I think Clemson would be fair better against them than they would Ohio State and early. But all the commentators today were saying that they don't want to be two because you have to play Clemson. So, but that'd be interesting. But big up to Virginia, man. Virginia. I told Cane fans, they said, why do you keep saying Virginia's going to win it? I said Virginia is a better team. I know Virginia lost to Miami. That was amazing. Miami will beat Virginia and Pitt this year. But I said Virginia's just a better team, man. This year.
Sure, they are.
Than Miami. Yeah, and that's what I told them. I said they're gonna beat them. They were gonna beat them. I think that final score was 17-9. But
Yes.
I said, it's just inconsistent by Miami. But now talking about them, Mark, I'll be listening to the show. You have a great night. I can't wait for championship week. I think we got some good games. Oklahoma and Baylor, I think. And then you got
Yep. We'll run down the championship games, DeAndre. Thanks so much for the call. I appreciate it. We don't necessarily need someone running down the championship games for us. But, yeah, we've got other calls coming in. All right. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Oh, hang on just a second. We lost our speaker for some reason. Don't know why that happened. There we go. Come on. All right, Eli, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. What's up?
No, I first wanted to give a shout out to Liberty for becoming bowl eligible. I mean, I know we only beat New Mexico State, but it's still a pretty sweet first year of being able to get to a bowl game, and we got it done. So
that's great.
Yeah, I mean, our best win is Buffalo, so our only bowl tie is the Cure Bowl. So I guess in this case, it's whoever the group of 5 team that gets the New Year's Six Bowl spot actually matters to us Liberty fans because, I mean, the Cure Bowl, it's either the American Athletic or the Sun Belt, and there are 7 conference ties for the American, and there's 7 bowl eligible teams, and there's 5 bowl ties for the Sun Belt and 5 bowl eligible teams. So what we need is for the group of 5 that gets into the New Year's Six Bowl to either be App State or the winner of the American Athletic game, championship game.
All right. Congratulations to the Flames. We will certainly preview your bowl game. And my aim is that once the bowl selections are made, that I will preview the game, of course, but I will also post a video on the bowl history of that particular bowl and the history of the series between those two schools. I can't imagine that there's going to be a long one with Liberty. Maybe this isn't the best time to highlight that because Liberty's not going to have much of a series against anybody. But certainly we'll be watching the ball game.
Yeah, well, if we played Georgia State, then we did once beat them when we were in the FCS. So that could be a possibility if we play them in the Cure Bowl. I think that's probably the only Sun Belt team that we played before that we would play again.
Good stuff, Eli. Anything else on your mind?
So to move on from that, so let's just say the 4th playoff spot comes down to either a 12-1 Utah or a 12-1 Oklahoma or Baylor. Which one do you think would get the which one do you think would get the playoff spot if Georgia loses to LSU?
Well, right now, the selection committee is telling us that Utah is better than Oklahoma or Baylor because they've got them ranked 6th, and they've got Oklahoma, they were 7th to start this week, I believe. And Baylor was like 13. So they're already telling us that they value Utah more than the other 2. I don't know that you can really separate the wins right now. Oklahoma obviously had the best win of the 3 this weekend. The selection committee had Oklahoma State ranked 21st. Oklahoma beat them on the road by 18 points, so that's a pretty substantial win. So we don't know when they have a team ranked 6th and a team ranked 7th like they did with Utah and Oklahoma. We don't know if there's a gap there or that's just the slimmest of margins. Virtually a tie. We have no way of knowing that. But their win, meaning the Oklahoma win over Oklahoma State, might be enough for the selection committee to lift Oklahoma past Utah. But as it stands right now, a win over Baylor for Oklahoma versus a win over Oregon by Utah are going to be judged pretty comparably because they've got Baylor and Oregon right around the same spot, 12 and 13, I think. So those are pretty much this, because you got an interesting debate and question right there, because basically they're telling us Utah and Oklahoma are ranked almost exactly the same, and Oklahoma just beat a better team, so they may jump Utah this week. We'll find out Tuesday night. And then on top of that, they're playing comparable teams in terms of the rankings in the championship games. So then it's going to come down to how impressive do those teams look in their championship games.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'll say though is that if Oregon had lost to it was Arizona State, right? That was their last loss.
Wait.
Okay, so if they had
Oregon, yes.
beaten Auburn or Arizona State, then I'd say probably the Pac-12 champion, whoever wins that game, goes to the playoff period, as long as Georgia loses. But that probably really screwed up Utah too, possibly.
What screwed them? Auburn winning?
Well, Auburn beating Oregon. I'd say either Auburn beating Oregon or Arizona State beating Oregon, because I mean the Pac-12 championship game, if they played a one-loss Oregon team, then
sure,
that would be a more impressive win than a two-loss Oregon team.
Yep, we certainly talked about that for weeks and weeks and weeks, that the Pac-12 needed one-loss teams to play in its championship game, and the Big 12 did as well, and the Big 12 was able to come through on that. Yep.
And then, but I mean, and as far as Baylor is concerned, I don't know. Like, I think they're way undervalued. Like, I think they should be in the top 10. I mean, their only loss was a really close loss to Oklahoma. And the Big 12 is better than the Pac-12.
So who would you rank Baylor ahead of that they weren't currently ranked ahead of?
Well, right now, it would probably, I think I was doing my rankings. I'd rank them about 7th right now.
7th?
Like, I would obviously rank them ahead of probably, well, I would rank them probably, I think I have them one spot below Utah, and I have Oklahoma 5, Utah 6, Baylor 7.
Well, I would still, I don't have my rankings in front of me, but I would still, let me see if these are last week's rankings, my current rankings. I don't have them in front of me, but anyway, I had Baylor one spot ahead of the committee. But certainly the teams, of course, that I had in front of them, I believe earned it. And I don't think the committee was off by much. I will still continue.
Alabama drops a lot.
I will still continue to rank Alabama ahead of Baylor.
I don't know about that. Alabama hasn't beaten anybody. I mean, their best win is Texas A&M.
What's Baylor's best win?
Probably Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State's ranked and Texas A&M isn't.
Yeah, but who they're ranked, you're using an argument where you're basically using the rankings. You're trying to create your own rankings, and you're basing them on other people's rankings. You understand the fallacy in that?
Yeah, but I mean, I think most people would probably have Oklahoma State ranked ahead of Texas A&M.
Oklahoma State has lost just as many games as Texas A&M, and there's no comparison between their schedules. Texas A&M has played such a tougher schedule than Oklahoma State. It's not even close.
Yeah.
LSU, Alabama, Clemson, Auburn, Georgia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you guys make an argument there, and then, but like Alabama, I mean, most of their other wins are against a bunch of like either mediocre or bad teams like Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Mississippi State.
And who's Baylor beaten?
I think they've beaten
Oklahoma State,
Kansas State, Iowa State. Pretty much most of. I mean, the Big 12 is a pretty decent conference. So I mean, their only win was their only loss was a really close loss to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I still, on strength of the losses in Alabama playing two of the 10 best teams in the country and maybe the best team in the country down to a final possession, down to the wire. And I'm not even basing this on, if Alabama marched out and played Baylor tomorrow, I would give somebody 10 points easily. But I don't base my rankings. I don't base my rankings on that. I base my rankings on the resume. But absolutely, I can't see Baylor beating Alabama. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, And the championship game, that'll be interesting. I mean, I guess that could just be a knockout. Like, what if Baylor ends up winning, but then Utah loses to Oregon? Then that would create and Georgia loses to LSU. That would create some real chaos there.
Well, I would hope that Baylor would make the playoff.
Yeah, but you never know. I mean, obviously they can't put Bama in now because they got 2 losses.
No, they would put Georgia in, possibly, if they were going to put a 2-loss team in.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't think you can really, especially because Georgia lost to South Carolina, I don't think you can put them in if they lose to LSU.
Well, first of all, I completely agree with you. I wouldn't put them in because they didn't win a conference. But also, they've already determined, the selection committee, that the loss to South Carolina doesn't mean a heck of a whole lot. Look at where they're ranked. They have the worst loss among the top 15 teams in the country. Georgia does.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the SEC championship game is going to be a really good one, too. I mean, so I guess if you're all about, like, you like conference champions, so if, let's say LSU loses to Georgia, would you consider not kicking them out and putting a conference champion like Oklahoma in if they beat Baylor in that scenario?
So if LSU loses to Georgia and Oklahoma and Utah win, yeah, that again, I go back to the fallacy of having 5 conferences in 4 spots, because then you've got a situation where I don't think there's any question that LSU has earned a place among the 4 best teams in the country. I believe they're one of the 4 best teams in the country against their schedule and all that they've accomplished. And they certainly, in my eyes, are better than those 2 teams. But those 2 teams would have won conferences with only 1 loss. And so I would make the determination that those other teams would make the playoff. I think there's a reason we play. I think there's a reason we play in conferences and play conference championship games. Otherwise, blow up the conferences and play a random schedule. Put everyone's schedule in some kind of a randomizer, and let everybody play 1 through 130, and we would rank them 1 through 130.
All right,
we could do that.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about how much we hate the playoffs, so I don't really want to get into that at this point. But I'm just kind of asking based on just what the system is right now.
Yeah, I think the committee would cringe having to make that decision. They certainly don't want to drop LSU out of it. But if that's what they're
put Georgia and Bama in that year.
Yeah. Oh, I would expect. Wow, that would be fascinating to see Georgia win the SEC and Ohio State hold serve, and they could go the route of 2 from the SEC and completely shut out the western half of the United States and keep it within the ACC, the SEC, and the Big Ten, and shut out both of those teams. That certainly could happen.
I wonder if Baylor and Oklahoma regret playing like terrible non-conference schedules at this point, because that's one thing that might come back to bite them in the butt.
Baylor and who? Oh, Utah?
Oklahoma.
Well, Oklahoma.
Baylor.
Yeah. Well, Baylor always does. They probably never considered they'd be in this place. But yeah, Baylor's just it's beyond pathetic. It's embarrassing. Any Baylor fan, they have no control over it. So I'm not attacking them, but their team, their football program, is embarrassing when it comes to scheduling. They are the very worst scheduling team in the country and have been for a long, long time. Oklahoma probably expected UCLA to be better when they scheduled them.
And they also played Houston, I think some FCS team or something.
Yeah.
So I guess there was a pathetic, because I thought Houston would be much better this year. I was surprised they were so bad.
Yeah, and the game was scheduled a long time ago, and that's another reason we shouldn't be scheduling games 12 years in advance.
Yeah, Like, what if Alabama? Like, imagine say 20 years from now, Alabama and Clemson end up being like in the situation that Florida State, Tennessee are.
Sure.
Because I remember 20 years ago, Miami, Tennessee, and Florida State were all really dominant programs, and now they're all teams that are fighting for bowl eligibility.
Yeah, things change. Things change.
Yeah, when Nick Saban retires, that'll be interesting to see if Alabama like just really falls off or something.
Yes, we will come to that point at some point down the line. All right, Eli. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. Enjoy the night. All right. Who else is in the live chat? Got a call coming in.
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Lantown, the phones are off the hook tonight. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? First time caller, correct?
No. This
No.
would be my third call.
Third call. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Lantown.
Lentown. How you doing tonight?
You threw me off
Okay.
a little bit.
Okay.
I had a big spiel for you, but then you threw me off with this deal about the play calling not being one of the most important factors in Miami's problems this year.
I didn't
And
say that.
last year.
No. I didn't say that. I said that it was overrated. Just in general, it's overrated by fans. I think it's overrated. It's still important, but it's overrated. It's easily criticized because when a play doesn't work, it can be easily criticized. So go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
But when there's a trend of let me say this. There's been a couple of times this year where the play calling has been questioned by the announcers on ESPN. You don't hear that often.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know football that well, but I've been watching it for a long time. And I never played football. But I can tell the difference between good play calling and bad play calling. Plays that you call in certain type of situations and plays you don't call in certain type of situations. And Danino seems to be making the wrong calls at the wrong time. Here's a coach who has been on 13, on my count, different teams since he started his coaching career in 1991. He's a journeyman coach. Most of it has been coaching quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
He was the quarterbacks coach at Alabama. If it's true that he had his choice of pickings between Alabama and Georgia as being the offensive coordinator, but he chose Miami, if that's true, I thought to myself, okay, here's a guy who's going to make a significant less amount of money, and he's going to have leverage on the head coach because he knows Manny Diaz is a first-time head coach. Moreover, Manny Diaz never played college football in his life. So if I'm Dan Enos and I want to get back to being an offensive coordinator and be a head coach one day, I know that I'm going to feel the pressure at Alabama, and I know I'm going to feel the pressure at Georgia, and I may be gone in a year. And I'm not going to have any leverage over anybody. Or I go to Miami and I get the leverage over Diaz. And then maybe get a head coaching gig somewhere else. That's Dan Enos for you. Here's a guy who I pointed out to you, or excuse me, I notified you in your comment section about some footage that I saw of him preseason during the spring ball, the way that he was addressing female assistants. His temperamental issues are off the charts. I've seen it before on the sideline. I saw it on the footage. I notified you in the comment section. Danny, in this particular case, with the play calling, I'm convinced Danny knows is the problem. Say what you want to say, and I could be wrong. I love being pointed out that I'm incorrect. Diaz doesn't know anything about offense. He understands it from a defensive perspective. Moreover, he never played college football. I can admit when I don't know anything. I can admit that. I don't have a problem. But this guy, they told me, shut up. They told me, be quiet on the chat. You don't know what you're talking about. They rolled their eyes at me. He never played college football, Manny Diaz. I don't want to jump to another deal right now. I want to stick to Danny Knows. So he hires Danny Knows. You're coming from Alabama, so you must be the guru, and you must know everything there is to know. Plus, you are a college quarterback, and you come with high references, great references. And this is what we get. He promised us, here's a guy. There's been other people who heard what he said in an interview. He told the interviewer that he was going to call the plays according to his talent. And I thought to myself after doing research, college football has changed a lot, or this guy's really smart and he really knows what he's doing. Because he has a dynamic playbook that he can call plays. If something's not working, he can make an adjustment, or he can switch from one offensive system to the other, coming from a pro style to a spread, because he sees that the pro style's not working, so he's going to go to the spread offense. That's the way I understood it. Or at least call the plays according to, like, if something's not working, let's try something else. He didn't adjust his playbook, and he has not adjusted his play calling. Okay? So I think the play calling is a big issue at the University of Miami, and I think we could have done a lot better with a more effective play caller. Can I go to the? Can I start from the get with Manny Diaz?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, Manny Diaz is never played college football, but he's a smart guy, and smart guys figure things out. And he said, "I want to be a coach." So he set out to be a coach, and he's a fantastic defensive coach because he figured it out without ever playing the game above the high school level. Okay, he's a smart guy. He's a marketing genius. I don't want to throw the word genius around. He's a great marketer. He's a great leader, and he's a great motivator, and he's got a great intellect. And he figured out how to be an effective defensive coach. Okay? He used his marketing skills. Okay, what I'm trying to say is to kind of make up for his lack of playing time in college football as a player, that he never played the game at college football. He learned how to make up for that. He's a great motivator, he's a great leader, and he's a great marketer. Look what he did with that hashtag, the new Miami. It was so effective. Everybody went bananas over it on Twitter. It caught fire like no other. He brought an 88-foot yacht on the Miami River. The way that it was advertised to us was that he was going to be coming out, he was going to talk, the coaching staff was going to be there, he was going to have drinks, he was going to mingle, and he was going to answer questions, even on an interpersonal basis, just walking amongst the crowds. He was there for 30 minutes and he left. Somebody wiser and older told me, not because of what I just said about being 30 minutes and left, but the whole 88-foot yacht thing, that was kind of a red flag. That was pointed out to me. And I said, you know what? It took me a while to realize, but you know what? That's probably true. He's a great marketer.
Okay, so not to completely interrupt, because I want you to make your points, but as you can imagine, most people want to talk about the playoff and the teams in contention and so forth. So if you could basically summarize your points concerning Dan Enos, I think I've caught that you think he's done a horrible job of play calling, and that Manny Diaz is a good coach.
I have no sympathy.
Is that what you're telling me?
No sympathy for Dan Enos.
Okay.
No sympathy for Dan Enos.
Well, I don't have any sympathy for him either. He makes a whole lot more money than I do, for one thing. So your point is that Dan Enos should be fired, is what I'm guessing.
He's not going to make the adjustments.
Okay.
So, yes.
And Manny Diaz is a good coach.
Manny Diaz. I could see them winning if they bring in like a really good an offensive coordinator who knows what he's doing really, and then him taking over the defense. I could see them winning maybe 9-10 games next year with this same schedule or something very similar to it. Oh yeah.
Well, with that schedule that they played this year, I can see a hell of a whole lot of teams across the country that could win 8 or 9 games. That's what's alarming. Against that schedule, that they could only win 6 games.
There's Manny, Does Manny Diaz have? Of course, because he made the hirings and he's doing the coaching day to day. But if you want to listen, I'm not going to cry if Manny Diaz gets dismissed or gets fired. We can move on. There's plenty of head coaches in America. But I don't think he's the main problem.
All right, very good. Well, I appreciate the call. Was there anything in particular you wanted me to comment on concerning this situation?
No, I thought you were going to maybe say a little bit more, but you kind of, with the play calling, that was pretty much everything that you had. I thought you were going to say a little bit more because you were going to say we weren't going to be happy and all that. No, it was just a play calling.
I was making a statement about play calling in general. In terms of the Miami situation, we do a Miami show each and every Wednesday night. And when Dan Enos was hired, people seem to be very overwhelmingly happy about that based on his experience and what he had accomplished elsewhere. There have certainly been...
You know why? Because we're suckers, and because he was coming from Alabama, and because if you come from Alabama these days, you know everything, and you're the master. That's why we were happy.
And because of success elsewhere. And then in regards to the play calling, certainly we've got Miami commentators that come on here that would agree with you to a certain extent that his play calling has not been the best. I was making the statement that I could not speak to the play calling. I'm not analyzing Miami's play calling on a regular basis, especially since they play a portion of their games have been meaningless at a certain point in the season, and I've got more important games to watch. But I do believe that play calling is somewhat overrated. Somewhat overrated. I don't want to be taken out of context. I didn't say it wasn't important. It's important, but it's overrated by many. Thanks for the call. We got a lot of calls coming in. I appreciate you calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. We had a number of people on the line, so please call back. All right. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Matt.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
Good. I vehemently disagree with what you said to the caller, 2 callers ago. Not the last one, but
okay.
When you said Bama should be ranked ahead of Baylor, why? Texas A&M's best win is Mississippi State, and that's Alabama's best win. And obviously, yes, they have good losses, but the thing is, you play sports to win. You don't play to lose. And even in those games, there was only one close game to Georgia. The other games were blowouts. In fact, in those 4 games, Texas A&M was got beat 140 to 58. So why should Baylor not be ranked ahead of them?
So basically, what you're telling me is that every team that has a better record than any 2-loss team in the country, 2 or lost, 3 or lost team should have a higher ranking. So you would
I think Baylor has just as good a resume as Alabama. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so you would rank. Well, the first statement you made concerned record.
Yes, but it's mostly for the fact is, if you look at a resume, I think Baylor's is better than Alabama's. I don't care about the 2 losses. I think Auburn actually has a better resume than Alabama, and I would even have them ranked ahead of Alabama and Baylor.
Well, they do now. Yes. They just beat Alabama head-to-head and only have 1 more loss. I will have to look at it when I make my top 25 tomorrow, but I certainly will consider ranking Auburn ahead of Alabama. I will certainly consider ranking Baylor ahead of Alabama. I don't have all the data in front of me, but considering the schedules, yeah, I still basically I go by the record, the wins and the losses. You know, how strong are the wins based on the opponent's ability, obviously, and how understandable are the losses based on. And certainly Alabama has lost to much better teams than Baylor has, or certainly they've performed better against the schedule. So that was going to be my third point is I look at the performance across the board in regards to the performance week to week. And certainly Alabama's been a more dominant football team week to week than Baylor. Baylor's been extremely fortunate. And if you take everything into consideration, there's one game we know that they would not have won had it not been for an official's mistake.
That's true. But they did.
Against a bad team.
I think that matters.
Oh, it matters. It's not their fault. But if it's one thing to say that there were some bad calls made with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter that affected the game and then trying to interpret that. It's another thing to know that there was a call made that affected the outcome of the game because it was the very last play of the game. And even the league admitted we botched the call and the call would have ended the game and Baylor would have lost the game to a 5-7 team. So I have to evaluate that too. And based on Alabama's play, I can't imagine that they would have lost to any teams that are 5-7. They lost on a missed kick at Auburn, 48-45, with a backup quarterback. And they lost to maybe the best team in the country by 5 points in a shootout. Baylor hung on by a thread against West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU. That game was gifted to them a few times. Baylor's had a remarkable season, an excellent season. I don't think they're better than Alabama, but that's not how I rank the teams. If I was just ranking it based on how good I thought the teams were, I wouldn't even rank them anywhere close to Alabama. But I rank it based on the resume. And certainly you make a good point in regards to Baylor's resume against Alabama. There's different ways to look at it.
Yeah, that was my only point. Resume was, yeah, I agree. If Tua is healthy, I mean, Baylor would be probably 21 to 24 point underdogs versus Alabama.
Sure. And also consider that some of Alabama's games are, one in particular I'm thinking of has become a better win than it was considered at the time. And if we're going to consider Oklahoma State at 7-5 in the Big 12 a good win for Baylor, then we should suddenly consider the Tennessee game a good win for Alabama because Tennessee is 7-5 as well.
No, that's true. I agree. And yeah, that's another point I wanted to hit on. Why do we count wins? Like a couple years ago, Florida State was ranked, I believe, 3rd in the country. Alabama beat them, and then Florida State went on to win, what, 5 games?
7 and 6.
And, okay, yeah,
yep.
We count that as a top 10 win. That's BS to me. I'm tired of it. I'm a Texas fan, and when I hear LSU beat a top, whatever, how many top 10 teams, I think, 4 now?
Yeah.
That Texas counts. No, we're not a top 10 team. Nowhere near. We're probably 30 to 40 range. So People need to stop doing that. They need to count them from the end of the season. Just like Baylor's best win is probably actually Kansas State. 'Cause Kansas State next week is going to be ranked probably 22 to 23, somewhere in there.
Sure.
After their win versus Iowa State today.
Yep. By me, they will. Yeah. Well, if I could address the point you just made, Matt, I think it's a really good one, and understand my perspective leans in your direction, not 100%, but about 75 to 80%. In that, yes, we have games played in September, so most of the games that we're evaluating are non-conference games that come into question, and those are almost all played in September at the beginning of the season, and we have certain preconceived notions and projections about teams, and so we rank them wherever we rank them. And the game that you point to in 2017, Florida State did absolutely nothing to earn that number 3 ranking. Nothing. It's not even like they were 3-0 in number 3. They were 0-0. That was a preseason ranking. They had done nothing to justify the ranking. And then they finished at 6-6 in the regular season. So I generally agree with you that we need to evaluate the wins based on how those teams finished more so than at the point in which the game was played. However, there are situations that change teams throughout a season, and there are factors that we could point to say, well, that was a pretty substantial team in September, and then A, B, and C happened to them, and they weren't as good at the end of the season, and therefore this contributed to them losing. Or this team wasn't very good in September, and they got much better and better and better, as evidenced by all these wins, and they were a much better team at the end of the year than what they showed when they played that particular team. So there can be that context played into it, but I certainly do believe that the final record is more significant than and should be taken into consideration at a much weightier degree than the original record and ranking. Texas is a good example, as you just pointed out.
Well, yeah, as a Texas fan, I mean, I think LSU played us at our peak. That was our peak. That was our healthiest. That was when no one had seen what our play calls looked like. So week 2, you don't really have much film to go on. I mean, later in the season, we were just diminished, demolished by injury. And then also our play calling was so predictable. It was just terrible. Everyone knew what we were doing. And just for fun, where would you rank Texas in college football realm of things? Top whatever.
This year's Texas team?
Yes.
It just finished 7-5, lost to Texas Tech, or beat Texas Tech. So they finished 7-5. I had Texas ranked in the bottom 3 or 4 spots of my top 25 prior to the Iowa State loss, 23-21, final play of the game. And so I had them in that range. Then they lost that game and then came back and beat Texas Tech. I think they're, again, not ranking them based on ability, but based on their resume. I'm going to probably have them on the fence in my top 25, probably in the 28 to 29 range.
Okay. Yeah, I was reading these comments right here, and they said they're not even a top 60 team. And
whoa. Top 60 team? Who in the world's making those comments?
That's what they're saying.
Oh, my goodness.
Also, I would like to say I'm not deep Barat. Us Texas fans do not like those Texas fans, so get him out of here. I'm glad he hasn't called back. But anyways, if you were a Michigan fan, would you be done with Jim Harbaugh?
Wow. Everything else Jim Harbaugh has done generally has been very positive for this program in elevating the recruiting. The record is so much better than it was the previous 5 seasons, all of that. And it should be. Any capable coach should have been able to go in there and improve on what Rich Rod and Brady Hoke did. So it's not like Jim Harbaugh has been a savior by any stretch. And we do have to determine that Ohio State is one of the, maybe it's the best football program in the country. It's certainly one of the 4 best or so. So he's got a huge challenge right there. And Penn State and James Franklin have not been able to conquer it either. So if we're putting that on Jim Harbaugh, James Franklin's been in the same position. Yeah, he did win a Big Ten championship. So there is that consideration before anybody jumps on me for that comment. But generally has not been able to surpass Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh is being paid top 3 money in the nation. Therefore, that's what he needs to accomplish. I still think he's a very good football coach, but he has not met the challenge, and it's now 5 years. And if I was a Michigan fan, would I be done with him? Yes, I would be very angry with him. Well, in a former life, I would be very angry with him. I don't get angry about those sorts of things too much these days. At my age, but the 25-year-old me, yeah, I would be angry with Jim Harbaugh. If I was running the show at Michigan, I would have a sit down with Jim Harbaugh, and he would very much know what the expectations were originally, but also certainly going into year 6, that this type of performance and outcome was understandable in years 1 and 2 and 3, and it becomes diminishing throughout the tenure. That, hey, we could pat you on the back for 10-2 and losing to Ohio State in a competitive game like a 2016 or a 2017. But when we're pushing year 6 now, and that's what we're staring at, 10-2, 9-3 won't get it done. Just like 8-3 did not get it done for John Cooper in the year 2000, and he was fired after that performance against Michigan because he couldn't beat them most of the time. So that would be the expectation, that you need to win championships at Michigan. And next year would probably be my final chance of giving Jim Harbaugh that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with Michigan's roster. I'm pretty familiar with Ohio State. I live in Ohio, so I hear about Ohio State a lot, and I follow them obviously a little bit. But do they have a lot of seniors leaving, or do they have a lot of returning players?
That's a great question. That is a tremendous question, because while I can name probably 35 players on their roster, I'm trying to think where they are with that.
I think Hudson he's probably their second best defense player. I think
he's gone. Yes. The wide receivers are generally coming back. So they're deep at wide receiver. They're very good there. Their running backs are coming back. Haskins and Charbonnet, they're both young. The offensive line.
Obviously, Patterson gone too.
Yes, Patterson's gone. Although a lot of Michigan fans wouldn't mind that outcome. Yeah, the secondary. Yeah, that's a great question. I can't really go back to my knowledge of their class status. Yeah, I can name all the players, but in regards to how long they've been around, yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because you're running. I hate Ohio State, by the way. I can't believe I'm saying this, but you're running into a buzzsaw, in my opinion. This is one of the best. If they win the national championship, is going to be one of the 7 to 8 best college football teams ever with the schedule they've run through. And you have to go up against the likes of Jeffrey Okudah, Sean Wade, Damon Arnett, Chase Young on defense. All those guys will be gone next year. To me, that will probably be your best opportunity to beat them. So I agree that would probably, if he can't win then, I don't know, especially if they have a lot of people returning, I don't know when or if he can win. I thought their best opportunity before then was when they took JT Barrett in overtime. I thought they should have won that game. Will Speight I think if Will Speight didn't have that broken collarbone, they do win that game. And it's not more about it, it's not really about the years for me. It's about the teams. Like, their teams early on, I think Jim Harbaugh should have beaten at Ohio State. The last 2 years, they've been really good.
Yes, Michigan's been very good the last 2 years.
Well, I mean Ohio State.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Michigan. I don't know what their problem is. But my last question for you would be: if Oklahoma or whoever wins the Big 12 and then Utah, who would you put in between those two teams?
Wow. So one of the previous callers somewhat asked that question, and weeks ago, before Oregon lost, I was giving Oregon a distinction over the other two teams because of their loss to Auburn being a quote-unquote impressive or understandable loss, because they controlled the game most of the way and lost on a fluke and had all sorts of injuries at the wide receiver position, and that was the best loss among the 3 teams. And then I would, for the Pac-12's sake, I was giving Oregon the nod with the one loss as being the strongest of those 3 resumes, and Oklahoma was playing close games at the time against TCU and Iowa State and others. Now that it's down to Utah and Oklahoma, I kind of sized it up in regards to non-conference schedules, conference schedules, and I believe that it's going to come down to who is the most impressive team in their championship game, because Utah has a one slot advantage over Oklahoma going into this weekend. And then, of course, Oklahoma beat a better team by 18 points on the road. And so we'll see if the selection committee actually elevates Oklahoma over Utah. They're both playing teams, even though Baylor just has the one loss, but playing teams that are generally ranked at 12 and 13 in the country, something in that range, 11 and 12. So the committee thinks very in a similar fashion by both of these teams. So if you're asking me what I think the committee's going to do, they're going to have to rate the performance in this championship game, because everything they've indicated thus far is that there is like a credit card, size difference between these two teams. I would have to go through the wins, and I think Oklahoma has better wins off the top of my head than Utah. Who has Utah really beaten? They're going to have the Oregon win. And then who's the next best team that they've beaten?
The second best team they played is
Washington?
USC, and they lost to them.
Yeah, they lost to USC.
Probably.
They lost to USC, yeah. So their next best win, Washington went 7-5. Arizona State is going to go 7-5 if they win tonight. I've got to give it to Oklahoma with wins over Texas, Oklahoma State, TCU, Iowa State, Baylor twice. I've got to say that Oklahoma's wins are better than Utah's wins.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. But you would probably say if Baylor won, obviously that gives Utah a better shot.
Well, in that case, Baylor has avenged its loss. So, and they barely lost the first game to Oklahoma. That's certainly a tougher call for me to make, because Baylor played absolutely no one non-conference. Not that Utah played a killer non-conference schedule. But Baylor would basically, because of the Big 12 being the Big 12, they've got a similar resume to Oklahoma. It's almost exactly the same resume if they win that game. They will have avenged its loss, and they will have beaten all the teams that Oklahoma beat, except that they lost to Oklahoma by 3 points. They actually have a better loss. So I think that Utah is hurt by the Pac-12 North not being as good as it typically is. Washington State, Stanford, all down. And they didn't play Oregon in the regular season. And then they finally got to play them and beat them in a championship game. So let's say both games are 31-28 games. So we can't distinguish who won a better game. The committee is telling us that Utah is going to go to the playoff over Baylor, because there's no way Baylor can jump like 5 spots to catch Utah. But I'm saying that Baylor will have better wins on its resume than Utah, and actually a better loss.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. As an Ohio State fan, I know you are. You would rather face Utah over Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I would. I don't think it's a slam dunk. I think Utah has a much better defense, of course. Yeah. So I don't think it's a slam dunk. I heard somebody make the comment tonight whether Utah could play with Clemson, LSU, and Ohio State, and I don't think they can. Not that they're not talented, but I just don't think that they're talented to that level. I would take any of those teams to win that game by a couple touchdowns, but it would be a good game. It would be a competitive game, but I don't think it would be a down to the wire last possession game.
And this may be a controversial statement, but I'd say in the modern day college football, the last 5 to 7 years, we've seen offense kind of rule the day where defense kind of used to. Because to me, the last couple champions have been really, really good offensively and been okay. Other than last year's Clemson, obviously was dominant on defense, have been okay defensively.
So you think Alabama was only okay defensively in 2017?
How many points did they give up to Clemson? They give up 30-something.
They didn't play Clemson. Well, they played Clemson. They gave up 6 points.
Who they play in the championship game?
They gave up what was that final? I think it was 26-20, right? To Georgia. They gave up 20 points to Georgia in an overtime game. And I think it was 26-20 or 26-23 was the final. They gave up
kind of slips my mind.
They gave up 20 points in regulation to Georgia, and they gave up 6 points to Clemson. And they did not play in the SEC championship game, and they shut out LSU and Mississippi State that year. They had a very good defensive team.
That's true. I also don't believe in Jake Fromm that much. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just going to have one hypothetical question real quick. You can
Sure.
answer yes or no. It's not going to be very hard. Okay, I've always said this. I agree no NFL or college team could beat an NFL team. But if the 2001 Miami Hurricanes played the 0-16 Lions, not the Browns, because if you look at the Browns actually had close games. The Lions got killed in all of them. Do you think Miami could beat that team?
No.
You don't? They had like 30-something pros. And they had a lot of Hall of Famers too, like Ed Reed and players of that.
Sure. They had 30-something pros, but the Detroit Lions had 53 pros.
I know, but I'm talking how many Pro Bowlers did the Lions? I don't
I
think.
don't know.
had
I'd
any
have to go
Pro
back to
Bowlers
their
on that team.
roster, but they had 53 pros and Miami had 30 pros. And they didn't have it's one thing to be a pro at the age of 20 to be a future pro, and it's another thing to be a pro 5 years later and be playing at that level in those systems 5 years later.
Do you think it'd be a close game?
Well, you'd certainly make a good point. I'm not laughing at your for as much as I typically laugh at that question that's thrown around. I see your point. Would it be a close game? I don't think that.
Miami's depth was insane. Running back was Clinton Portis.
Sure,
McGahee,
absolutely. I know. I watched those games. I watched the team play. I would like to go back and see who was on Miami's coaching staff, because I think that would make a fairly significant difference. A typical pro coaching staff versus a typical college coaching staff. I think that gap is closing, but I think as we go back in time, there was a significant gap between college staffs and NFL staffs.
Okay. Thanks for answering that question.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
That's the only team I can even argue would be the
Sure.
NFL team. Only team I ever remember.
I'll have to go back and look at that 0-16 Lions team. Was that the year that Orlovsky stepped out of bounds for a safety?
No, it was Joey Harrington at quarterback. And I looked at their schedule because at first I thought it was crazy too, but they got killed in most of their games. Like, it wasn't close.
Which doesn't happen in the NFL. Even bad teams play close games typically.
Yeah, like the Browns, when they went 0-16, had 3 or 4 games where if things go their way, they win 2 or 3 of them.
So that was in like what, 09? Off the top of my head.
I think it was 07, 09, somewhere in between there.
Okay, I'll have to look up that team.
I can tell you real quick. I'm just going to run down this. Head coach for Miami was Larry Coker. Offensive coordinator was actually the coach of the Cleveland Browns one time, Rod Chudzinski.
Yep.
Offensive scheme. Defensive coordinator was Randy Shannon.
Okay. Interesting.
I have no clue about the Lions, though. But yeah, thanks for taking my call.
Sure, appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Who was the head coach of the Lions? Was it Jim Schwartz? I don't think it was. Maybe it was Schwartz. Or was it Caldwell that coached that Lions team? All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We've got 170 on the line. Be good to me in the super chat. And also, of course, and a number of people have contributed in the super chat, and I will recognize you certainly. And if you do call me, please turn down the sound so there's not a reverb online. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Okay. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
Hey, McD, I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good. Was that me that had the volume up?
I don't know who it was.
Okay. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Just to
yeah.
clarify,
Oh, yeah,
let me
yeah.
clarify something real quick for everyone, including yourself. If you're asking because of this, I can't see anybody's phone number. So if anybody's hesitant to call me, I can't see your phone number because it goes through a process. See, the phone number that you see when you call me, the phone number that I give out, that's not my phone number. So nobody's getting my phone number, and I'm not receiving anybody's phone number. I have a phone service that buffers the call. So you're seeing the same number that I am. So nobody sees anybody's number and nobody can get anybody's phone number. So I just want to clarify that for everyone. All right, go to it.
Okay. Just one quick point that last call brought up. It was the 2008 Detroit Lions.
Okay.
And they were starting they were basically starting Kitna, who's now the the quarterback's coach from Dallas. And Dan Orlovsky did start most of that season. So I think that was the year that he just ran out bouncing in the back of the end zone. But looking at their thing, just looking at it at a glance, I'm not going to spend too long on this. They had about 5 or 6 games that were within one possession. So, I mean, I would probably disagree with the 2001 Kings will beat that Lions team, but I don't really want to talk about that. And there's actually one other point I want to talk about that I don't really want to talk about, but I do want to get into it. Mark, we want you to be like number one, you know how your goal is, how you want to do this full time, and we want you to be number one. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So I do want to give you a piece of advice, and I'm not here to offend anybody.
Sure.
It's nothing against this caller. The guy that was bringing up the Dan Enos thing, saying that he would keep Manny Diaz or fire Dan Enos or whatever. Mark, you should have hung up on that caller. All that caller did was read newspaper headlines, didn't know what he was talking about. And no offense to that caller or anybody that's offended by this, but I'm being completely honest with you, Mark. That guy had absolutely no clue what he was talking about. His reasoning might have been justified, but the reasons why, not even close. I mean, I'm not going to get into his reasoning because I don't even remember half of it. But I'm just going to keep it at that. If I was in your shoes, Mark, I would have hung up on that guy.
So McD, I appreciate your suggestion and so forth, and I know that you're a great supporter, and I appreciate all that you do here. So understand the situation I'm in. So for us to have really good debate and discussion here, sometimes I have to let some calls breathe. Meaning, you'll listen to some sports talk shows where they just let people they give them like 10 or 15 seconds just to blurt out a statement or a comment or a question, then they get them off the line to keep it moving. And there is some value to that, but we can't have a good discussion that way. And I like to let people have their time. But much like you, when you get on here and talk about Maryland and some other of the worst teams in the Big Ten, I have to weigh that versus, okay, what do people want to hear about? Do they really want to hear us talk about Maryland football for 10 minutes? I'm probably losing, callers, or I'm losing viewers, I should say, in those situations. So I try to take all of that in hand. And if somebody starts to ramble on and go through the same point time and time again, as was the case there, then I kind of, bring them to a conclusion to say, okay, what was your point? Is there anything I need to answer here? But I certainly take that into consideration, and I probably should be a little bit quicker with the trigger on the phone call. So watch out, McD.
Yeah, that was a very bad phone call, that one. I'm going to make one quick point about Maryland because I know you just said, no one wants to hear about Maryland. I thought we played well today. I hope this is good confidence going into the offseason, honestly, since this was the last game. I thought we finally showed some confidence. But that's all I'm going to say about the Terps. My first question is, what do you think about Barry Odom getting fired at Missouri this morning?
I wasn't shocked. Certainly, he was one of the coaches that you brought to my attention, so I kind of gave that some consideration. But I did think that considering Missouri's expectations or what they should be, certainly after a rough first season, he had progressed the program the next few seasons And I know that they expected more this season, that they were considered kind of a dark horse in that division, and people were anticipating 8 or 9 wins. I believe I picked them. I'm going to go through all my predictions at the end of the season and then compare them to actually what happened. And so you guys can make fun of me and so forth, and we can see where I hit it and where I missed it. But I wasn't that shocked by the outcome of their season at 6-6. And so it wasn't like they underachieved by that much in one season for it to be justified in my eyes. But I'm not that close to the situation. So apparently they were very disappointed in Barry Odom.
Yeah, I mean, as I said when I asked you all those coaches like a week ago, the reason why I named him was because the fans wanted him out, and I heard rumblings that he might be out. So I'm not surprised. If I'm one of these Group of 5 coaches, though, I might consider that job because I don't think there's a lot of pressure there personally, even though they did fire a coach after a 6-6 season. But I think as long as you win 8-9 games in Missouri, you're fine. So that's just my opinion. My second point I want to make is about the Michigan Wolverines and why they should not fire Jim Harbaugh. Ohio State is just a much better team. Any coach would have lost to that team. And I think Ohio State is the best team in college football, even though I'm still holding out hope for my championship pick and for Clemson versus Georgia, and having Georgia win it. But I do think they should keep Harbaugh. If they want to make a coordinator change, fine, but I think Michigan should keep Jim Harbaugh. Any team, like Saban would have lost to that team. Jimbo Fisher, he should be on the hot seat going into next season. Would have lost to that team. Even I think Urban Meyer, I know he would have lost to that team. So I really think that they should really keep Harbaugh. But that's my opinion. Speaking about Jimbo Fisher, what's going on in Texas A&M? I was not expecting that result. I thought that game was going to be a lot closer. And I think Jimbo Fisher should be on the hot seat because they're paying Jimbo Fisher to win championships down there at A&M, not to go covering someone like 8-5 every year. So that's just my opinion. I mean, I'm watching someone's team now getting ready to lose to Arizona State and about to give up another touchdown, field goal, or something.
Yep.
They're down by 2 touchdowns.
Let me make 2 points, McD, about your previous comment about the Jim Harbaugh situation.
Okay.
One would be that I understand your patience with Jim Harbaugh because the program has been much upgraded under his watch. But let's understand. So just because Ohio State is a juggernaut, you would understand him continuing to lose to them year after year after year after year and think it's justified and it's okay?
This season, I would understand. I thought they had an excellent game plan going into that game. But, Ohio State, I think, is just a completely different animal.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Ohio State might have the best talent in the country, certainly one of the top 3 rosters in the country, and Michigan's more in the 10 to 12 range. But you understand, Jim Harbaugh is responsible for that. He's responsible for that roster.
That is true.
So he's got nobody to blame. He's not an NFL coach that can blame the personnel department and say they need to give me better talent. He's responsible for that talent. So if he can't recruit better, then somebody else needs to have the job. So I do understand, and I've defended Jim Harbaugh for years here because I think he's a good coach, and his track record is excellent throughout his career. But he's being paid to win championships. He's being paid top 3 money in the country, and he has no one to turn to. He's given all the resources to do the job, and he built the roster. And I find amusing the comment that you made about Urban Meyer not being able to beat that team. Well, he built that team. He signed all those players. He shouldn't have to beat that team.
If he was coaching a different team.
Yeah, but one of Urban Meyer's great strengths is recruiting. And he built that team.
That is true.
So those are the only points I wanted to make.
Yeah, but I'm serious about this Jimbo Fisher thing.
Yep.
He should be on the hot seat going into next season. They pay him to win championships, and he's basically Kevin Sumlin-like. I mean, he went 9-4 and 7-5. That's Sumlin-like, and they got rid of Sumlin to going 8-5 every year. I mean, if he's going to continue going 8-5, they should just fire him.
True, but you're defending Jim Harbaugh after 5 seasons, and you've put Jimbo Fisher on the hot seat after 2 years.
I'm defending Jim Harbaugh this season. I'm not just for this season and specifically that game. I think you could give. I think Saban would have lost to that team. I think Kirby Smart would have lost to that team. I think Ohio State. As I said, I'm hoping that my championship pick is correct. I picked the Bulldogs to win it all, but I think Ohio State's going to win it all, honestly. I do not see this team losing a game. I think they're the best team in the country, and it's not even close.
Okay. My point about Jimbo Fisher would just simply be that I understand what you're saying. It's been a huge disappointment the way they've played. I don't think anyone would be surprised, including myself, with Texas A&M going 7-5, because I might have picked them 7-5, either 8-4 or 7-5. I don't remember. Maybe I thought that they would win one of these tough games, and they didn't win any of them. But it's been more of a disappointment that they just flat out didn't show up in this game. And now we've seen down the stretch that Alabama is really not quite as good as they typically are, and they were blown out by Alabama as well. They didn't play a competitive game in really any of those games. The Georgia game, they played relatively well, only losing by 6 and getting some bad calls in that game. I mean, but he's not going to be on the hot seat. He's making too much money. He's not going to be on the hot seat next year.
He's on my hot seat next year. I give a coach 3 years usually, and this is his 3rd year, and he had 9 wins to 7 wins. If he's between that 7 and 9 win mark and paid that amount of money, I'm telling you, they should be some serious consideration down that A&M. 2 other quick points I want to make. Very quick. Game of the year, Iron Bowl. Obviously, that was the game of the year. Hell of a game. It sucks to see a team lose. I think Alabama got screwed there before the end of the first half, but it's whatever. And then Minnesota, that team. I know they lost. Still a hell of a year for the Minnesota Gophers, 10-2. They'll get a shot at 11-win season and probably the Outback Bowl most likely.
You've come around on Minnesota, McD.
I bought into it after the Penn State game. I needed to see them beat somebody, and they did. And also one other quick point about Alabama. They should not be in a New Year's Six Bowl. Their best win is either Texas A&M or Tennessee. Take your pick at whichever team you want.
Mm-hmm.
They should not even be. I wouldn't even put them in the Outback Bowl, honestly, or the Citrus Bowl or whatever. But they'll probably get one of those 2 bowls, the Citrus or the Outback Bowl. And Auburn's a top 10 team if they were in any other conference outside of the SEC. I just want to throw that out there. Thanks for taking my call, Mark. Turf season is over, but we have college basketball, 2 top 10 teams in the men's and women's department. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Thanks for thanks for taking my call, Mark. And go Terps.
McD, check out the screen. BW thinks you're a savage.
I am a savage.
Have a good night, McD. Appreciate it. All right. I am going to get to these super chats. I appreciate it. If you could see the application that I have running on the screen, you would know why I don't get to them immediately. I'm working my way through the chat, and it looks like I'm like 12 minutes behind. So I will catch up with those very quickly. All right. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Murder Blaze.
Murder Blaze. I'm doing just fine. Is this the first time you've called?
Yes, sir.
I believe so.
I'm
yes.
Wait until after the victory.
I appreciate all the comments that you deliver on the videos and so forth. So, thanks for the call. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. It's been a big
weekend, hasn't it? You know, all these big, well, I wouldn't say big, but at least good games this weekend. Seeing a lot of these teams go out there and dominate, and then some surprising victories for some people. Tennessee comes to mind. Now, my question is, obviously Illinois lost today, but Tennessee and Illinois are going bowling for the first time in quite a while, I would say. Do you think there's any chance that they can win those games?
Well, we don't know who they're playing. And just to clarify, it's been a long time for Illinois. They went to the Rose Bowl in 2007. I don't know that they've been to a bowl game after. They played in a bowl game after that. I'm trying to think. It was like the Heart of Dallas Bowl. But anyway, yeah, they played. Illinois played. Oh shoot! It's Louisiana Tech about 5 years ago in a bowl game, the Heart of Dallas Bowl. That is their last bowl appearance, and I don't think they played in a bowl game before that since the 2007 Rose Bowl. Tennessee's only missed 2 years of bowl games. They went in 2016 against Nebraska. But they've only missed 2 years. So yes, can they win those games? Well, I don't know who they're playing. You got to let me know who they're playing. Sure, they can win those games. They're going to go up against like competition.
I suppose that's right. And then my follow-up question for that is, obviously, we've got Ohio State, who's basically closed out their season, going into the conference championship game against Wisconsin. Just a quick question. Do you think that if they lose that game against Wisconsin, that they would be ousted out of that last playoff spot?
Well, somebody else asked me that tonight. Certainly that would first depend on the nature of the game. So they need to lose a very close game. They can't get beaten by 17 points. You know, they need to lose a field goal type game. And then it would be very interesting to see if the committee would plummet them from 1 all the way down to 5, because Wisconsin's probably going to be a top 8 or 9 team this week after what they did against Minnesota. So then they're going to vault Wisconsin after beating Ohio State probably in the top 6 or 7 range. And so that loss by Ohio State, let's say it's 31-30, is a pretty understandable loss with their resume. But then again, they're not a conference champion, and Utah and Oklahoma would have strong cases against them. I really can't answer that question. I would be a conference championship guy that would let in the conference champions. But by looking at the resume, do they have better resumes than Utah and Oklahoma? Absolutely. Even if they lose that game, they've got a better resume than those two teams.
All right. I guess that answers my question. Yeah, thank you for taking my call, and have a good night.
Hey, I appreciate it. Have a good night. All right. Let's see what we've got here. So again, let's see. Championship games, Oregon, Utah on Friday night. Big 12 with Oklahoma, Baylor. Ohio State, Wisconsin. We've seen that a few times, 3 times now since 2014. Clemson, Virginia, as expected in the ACC by myself at least, and the media, I believe, selected the Cavaliers, and then, of course, LSU and Georgia. So let's see. How many did I hit preseason? I said Oregon, Utah. I said Oklahoma, Texas. I said Ohio State. Don't hold this against me. This was a horrible selection that I knew was going to be wrong, and I shouldn't have gone for the bait. I shouldn't have gone for the Kool-Aid. Nebraska. Wow. I said all offseason, Wisconsin and Iowa are the 2 best teams in the Big Ten Western Division. I said it all offseason that they were the most solid programs, teams, personnel, that Nebraska wasn't ready, and then I pulled the trigger on Nebraska. Somebody sold me on Nebraska. So anyway, I picked Ohio State, Nebraska preseason. I picked Clemson, Virginia. I picked Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma, Texas, and Oregon, Utah were my preseason selections. My college football playoff is still alive. No, it's not. I had Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia. So Alabama gone. But if there's any two-loss non-conference champion out there that could possibly ever make it, that would be the school. I was thinking about this after the Iron Bowl, Carson, between Auburn, Florida, and Alabama. Those particular bowl committees are going to have their selections to make. They're not going to be have to follow any stipulations that's going to they're certainly going to be able to cross lines. They're going to be within the win ratio, the ranking ratio that they need to be in to select whomever they feel is going to give them the best TV number and the best attendance at the stadium and the best matchup, because you got Florida 10-2, Alabama 10-2, and even Auburn with a win over Alabama at 9-3. That certainly can be debated. It can't be debated. It's a fact. But in regards to what had to result to give the SEC these championship game appearances, they've also been selected to go to more BCS championship games than anybody. So they were also given more opportunities than anyone. So I'll let everyone know that we are at 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. We've got 165 on the line. Please lock it in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We discuss, debate, and analyze the game that we all love. For the hardcore, serious fan like you, that doesn't mean we need to be serious all the time, but we're serious fans. Here's the difference. So hopefully we don't take it too seriously. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's Reasonable Gump.
Hey, I'm doing just fine. I don't need to ask how you're doing. I don't think I do.
I'm probably doing a right bit better than people may imagine, but probably have had better days. Not gonna lie about that. But anyway, I thought it's getting late here. I thought I'd just call in, and I don't know if you even watched the game or not. If you were too involved in other games, but just thought.
I watched the game. Yep.
Get your thoughts on it. I've been out with my wife most of the day, so I saw you posted a video, but I'm not sure what you said in it. Would you mind just telling me what you thought about it?
Well, I highlighted the missed kick, the 30-yarder clanked off the left upright, in regards to Alabama's notorious kicking issues throughout the years. And it's kind of ironic that 6 years after a kick six, we had a kick zero, is what that was. Obviously, 0 points on the board for Alabama that cost them the game, although they did have plenty of time. I was estimating that with a minute left, once they stopped Auburn and forced the 4th and 4 punt, that they would have gotten the ball back with just about a minute on the clock at their own 35, needing 35 to 40 yards for a reasonable attempt, if that. So obviously the too many men on the field was a botched personnel issue that cost them the game. Otherwise, they've got roughly at least a 50-50 shot of winning that game. Still.
Yeah, that's it's been a while since we talked, but if you remember, I think the last phone call I did was me. I think it was after the Texas A&M game, and which I called in and said how this team wasn't going anywhere. I highlighted two things. One was a pitiful defense, and two was the fact that our offense was one-dimensional, and it all revolved around the quarterback. At that time was Tua.
And
I think I was well and truly proved right over the course of this season. The defense got absolutely no better at all. Like the caller who wanted to come on after me that night and say that it would because they're just young or we have injuries or blah blah blah. I want to make that injury excuse like so many people want to do. Yeah, the thing of it is, after they have 11 games of experience, they're not freshmen anymore. I mean, technically they are, but give me a break. That's playing 11 games in the SEC, you should be ready to. You should know what you're doing by that point. 48 points to Auburn, and Auburn's offense is not exactly 5 stars this year. That's bad.
So
I didn't get a chance to talk to you about the LSU game, but and I'm not going to sit here and discuss it. This isn't about that, but basically, in a nutshell, we lost that. With 3 times we came within 1 possession, needing just 1 stop by the defense, and 3 times our defense just laid over. And they just got completely ran over, didn't even try. And that's just kind of what happened in this game. We had no chance of stopping. You can't win games without a defense. And then what happened? So the quarterback, our quarterback goes down because Nick Saban doesn't know how to recognize when his player is injured. And I mean, that was just pretty much it. And unless some people were talking about whether or not we were going to pull an Ohio State 2014. They lost their starting quarterback and they somehow came out better. Well, there was a fat chance of that happening.
So
go ahead. You were saying
one of the points that you just made is one of the points I made on the video. Is that even though I think Auburn's a very capable team, certainly if you look at their point totals and their offensive production against the better teams on their schedule, this is certainly an aberration, and it points to a huge flaw on that side of the ball for Alabama that you certainly warned me about. And that's we've seen Auburn play offense against a number of good teams. So I'm not just comparing this against one other game or 2 other games. I'm comparing this against like 5 or 6 other games. They could only score 21 points against Oregon, and they needed a miracle throw to put on the last touchdown. They only put up 20 points against Ole Miss of all teams. They only put up 13 points at Florida. They could only score 20 points against LSU. They could only score 2 touchdowns, 14 points against Georgia. On and on and on against the best teams on their schedule. They could only score between 15 and 20 points. They did put up, 2 pick sixes. So obviously the defense scored twice for them. So you take those touchdowns away, and they're a 34-point offensive effort against Alabama. Although I did also notice or mention in reference that if you get a pick 6, obviously that deprives your offense of a possession. So that has to be taken into consideration. But to see that a Auburn running back, Boobie Whitlow, ran for 114 yards on 16 carries, and was not supported by a prolific passing game, that Alabama gave up that many points and that much yardage to a running back, and that just never happened between 2008 and a couple years ago, to your point. And also that Bo Nix has a bright future at Auburn, and he's a baller. He's a gamer. I credit him with his spirit, with his fire, his leadership abilities, and his just athleticism, but he is not a good thrower of the football at this stage of his career. And that has been Auburn's downfall in those big games, is he has not been accurate. He has not been throwing for high completion percentages, and didn't in this game. And even against a quarterback like that, they gave up a ton of yardage and a ton of points.
Yeah. You mentioned the quarterback, and while we were watching, I was like pointing stuff out to my wife. I'm like, people are always ragging on this Bo Nix guy, and not for bad reason, but there were a lot of those passes where he actually hit it on the money. It was the receivers who let him down. So I don't actually put all the blame on Auburn's passing game on Bo Nix. I thought he had a above average game, just him skill wise. I thought a lot of those passes should have been caught by Auburn's receivers. I'm not saying he didn't make bad decisions or bad throws. He did, but he didn't throw 2 pick sixes. So I'm not. If anyone wants to try and compare the quarterbacks, I'm going to give the edge to Bo Nix on this one. I've never quite. I had pretty much given up on this season already. But probably the most painful part was the fact that, or somehow we found another way, by we, I mean Nick Saban, found another way to screw this entire season up. How in the world did you throw the game away by sending too many players out on the field? That does not go anywhere except coaching. I'm sure you'll agree with me on that.
Absolutely.
100%, that is a coaching mistake. And it's at the absolute worst, literally the worst possible moment.
Mm-hmm.
You send too many, you forget that you can only send 11 players out there. I mean, I'm being a little facetious. Obviously, they didn't forget anything. They just screwed it up somehow. But,
Yep.
I mean, and like you said, I mean, I kind of thought with a minute left,
Sure.
I mean, we were moving the ball on them.
Yeah.
So
in a 48-45 game, when you get the ball back at your own 35 with a minute left, and you only need a field goal, albeit you're placing it on the leg of your kicker, that's a different story. But still, yeah, you've got a reasonably high chance of winning the game.
Well, there's no chance of sending that kicker out there. But I was mad that we sent him out there on that fourth down. I don't care if it's 4th and 20. We have a better chance of throwing a 20-yard pass than we do kicking a 30-yard field goal. I mean, there's literally not another football team in the NFL, college football, or high school that can say that. But that's reality. So I was furious when I saw that the field goal unit come on there. But no, I don't think we would have done that again. I think I think we would have tried to driven down for a touchdown or lose it. But that's neither here nor there. Again, I can't even. It's almost hard to even talk about how we lost that game. Not the entire game itself, but just that last play. I mean, it's so inexplicable. But that's actually. I don't know if you highlighted this in your video too. That's a strange issue for Alabama to have, is it not? We used to be at least a really disciplined team. Now we're what the 3rd or 4th most penalized team in the country. Well, it finally caught up to us. It literally lost us a game tonight. That a penalty literally lost us the game, and that's just another way somehow the team has just gotten away from Saban. And yeah, I'm going to sit here and talk bad about him because all of this comes down to coaching. I know he's like the Messiah incarnate in Tuscaloosa, but this is just, after 2 really disappointing seasons in a row right now, you really got to stop and take a look here at what has happened. How do we go from, over the course of a decade, any metric you can possibly bring up being the top defense in the country, over the course before these past 2 years, any metric you could bring up, Alabama was number 1, and whatever you want to talk about. And we were one of the most disciplined teams, and we had a well-rounded offense of a passing game and a rotating running back game. We may not have scored 50 points a game, but we scored in the upper 30s or mid-30s. How do we go from all that to literally a passing team with nothing else? No defense, no discipline. I'll admit our running game came on strong at the end of the season, but that's only because everyone else kind of saw the writing on the wall. The Tennessee game is like, yep, Tua is hurt again, so everyone else better pick up the slack. But I mean, I'm not sure how much of that you agree with, but that's just what I've seen over these past 2 years. Somehow, the priorities on that coaching staff have changed, and it hasn't worked at all.
Well, somebody called earlier commenting that football has been taken over, college football, by offense, which I understand his point, but that defense has taken a back seat, which I understand his point. But you still need a better defense, a strong defense, to win a national championship. And the metrics surrounding that performance of defense is going to be different in 2019 than it was in 2009. You're not just going to go out there and shut out teams and, win games 23-10 like you did 10 or 12 years ago. So the metrics are going to look different, but you're still going to be decidedly better than the average, than the norm. Clemson was a great defensive team last year. Your 2017 team, I don't know if you heard the caller about 3 to 5 callers ago that was commenting that offensive teams now win national championships. And I think I pushed back against that pretty substantially, because your defense in 2017 threw 2 shutouts against the 2 best teams on its schedule before they hit the Auburn game in Mississippi State and LSU, and then held Georgia to 20 points in regulation after limiting Clemson to 6 in the playoffs. So that obviously was a superior defensive team, and Alabama continued even up until 2 years ago to win championships on defense first and foremost. And certainly Clemson's team did last year in holding Notre Dame to 3 and Alabama to 16, and only, nothing after the first quarter. So defense still rules. The metrics aren't going to be as impressive as they were 10 years ago, but it's still against the norm. It's going to be maybe even more of a gap between the top defensive teams and the lesser defensive teams. Yep.
I mean, what national title games these past 10, 12 years now, which one of them were shootouts?
Very few.
The two Alabama, because the Alabama Clemson back-to-back ones, 15 and 16.
Yeah,
those are shootouts.
The first game was certainly a shootout.
Both of those teams came into that generally having shut people down. It's not like they were Oklahomas of those seasons. No, it was kind of like the Texas USC of, like, what was it, 05? That was a shootout, but both teams fielded a defense all year. That's what those 2 Alabama Clemson games were.
Sure.
Other than that, last year, Clemson scored a lot of points, but they didn't need to. They only needed 17. Georgia and Alabama, what was the final score?
I think it was 26-23. Yeah, 20-20 in regulation.
Go back before the Alabama Clemson one. What did Ohio State beat Oregon by?
42-20.
What was that one? So yeah, they only needed 21 points.
Yeah.
Before the you know what I mean.
And Oregon was the number 1 rated offense in the country. They averaged over 50 points a game against the Pac-12. And scored
the Chip Kelly era,
and scored 59 against Florida State in the semifinal game. So when they played a defense, then they could only score 2 touchdowns.
I mean, yeah, I don't buy you have to score 40 points to win a game. I'm like, no, you don't. Just because teams are scoring 40 points, a lot of times, if they're a really good team, their opponent's not even getting close to 40 points. I mean, Ohio State didn't need 40 points to beat Michigan today. Did they even need 30?
And the other thing, I think you'll understand this, that even though Michigan scored 27, that doesn't mean that Ohio State even needed to score 28. Had they only scored 28 or 30 points, I'm guessing that Michigan would not have scored 27. It just became one of those kind of games where they could give up some points, and it didn't matter.
But yeah, so no, I'm not really sure. What happens going forth with Alabama right now, because this was the overhaul year. Like, Saban changed, or he supposedly changed everything coming into this. Overhauled literally the entire coaching staff because of the catastrophe that was last year. And so what kind of product does he come out? Does he put on the field? Well, how about one that did not beat a single ranked team all season and lost to both of the ranked teams that did play? There's no other way to describe this other than just an absolute catastrophe of the season. I mean, so yeah, I don't know what's going to go from here, but I can't really say I'm too hopeful right now, or I'm too optimistic. But anyway, so if people were waiting and cheering to see the fall of Alabama, I think it's either happening or it's pretty close to happening. But anyway, thought I'd get on here, show I'm not hiding away. I wanted to call after the LSU game, but I don't think you live streamed that night.
I did not. I don't. Well, maybe I did. I don't remember. I don't think things are quite as dire as you make them out to be. Reasonable Gump. You guys will be back in the race next year. You're in the race this year. I still consider this national championship contention. When you're playing your rival down to a 3-point game in the final seconds, and you're sitting there at 10-1, you are in national championship contention. So nothing's really changed, and you've got a backup quarterback in the game. That's substantially worse. I'll put it the positive slant. Your starting quarterback is substantially better than your backup. So that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I just don't ever really like bringing that up because the typical response to that, which is a correct response, is that every team has injuries.
Sure. Yeah. You play with who you have. You play with who you have, certainly, and it shouldn't be made as an excuse, but we do need to factor that into, okay, what type of season did this particular team have? Where do they stand as a program? And, taking the results into account, I think there's a balanced approach to it. No, each team has to take the injuries as they come and go out there with the team that they have. Absolutely. All right, Reasonable Gump.
All right, man.
Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
See ya.
All right. We hit a high of about 170 on the line. We're at 146. I appreciate all the fine comments in the live chat. Understand that I will give recognition to the folks that gave in the super chat, but please understand, I've explained this a few times, that as I post comments to the screen, maybe I'll have to go online to YouTube. I'm not on YouTube, so to use another application is required to post the comments to the screen. Sometimes the super chats are lost. They're just lost. I won't go through the entire explanation of the whole deal. But I certainly want to give recognition to everyone, and I will be shooting a video at some point, if not multiple videos, to give you folks recognition for your contributions, not just the super chat, those of you who contribute in so many other ways. So I appreciate that. And no, I don't sleep. Actually, I got some fine sleep last night. I was up till maybe about 4 o'clock in the morning, as I typically am, but that 4 o'clock in the morning turns into a wake-up call at like 8 o'clock in the morning, so I don't sleep much. But I slept until I didn't get up until 11:30 this morning. So I wanted to get myself a good breakfast and workout in, but that didn't happen because, of course, the games all started at noon. And I'm not a big proponent or consumer of pregame. When I was 15 years old, I'd watch all the pregame and all this business and watch all the analysts and stuff. I have no time for that. I just want to see the kickoff. So on Saturday, I barely turn anything on before the noon kickoff. But again, if anybody has any comments or questions, and you guys did a great job with your comments and questions on the phone in particular, I appreciate all the subject matter. And I want you guys to understand that I think I know what I'm talking about, but at the same time, I don't pretend to know everything, number one. And number two, that other people who don't agree with me don't have good points, because I'm not, certainly we all take this in from a different perspective, and I try to be measured and logical and knowledgeable about it. But I certainly can spew some things out that can be certainly torn to shreds or debated to some degree. So I will never think that of myself in regards to that my opinion is smarter than everybody else's. So please don't think that. If that's the way it comes across, I apologize. But I certainly do think I know what I'm talking about. But these subject matters, whether it comes to a playoff system or measuring the teams, there's different ways to approach that. And That's what we have. So we will preview the championship games. If you guys lock it in here, you've seen that I think we've done a really good job of previewing all the big games every week. This past week, we hit Wisconsin, Minnesota from a number of angles, Ohio State, Michigan from a number of angles. We talked Florida, Florida State, and Alabama, Auburn from different angles, and Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Oregon, Oregon State, and on down the line, a bunch of different games. So we will hit all of the conference, all of the Power 5 conference championship games. I attempt to hit from both sides. Ohio State, Wisconsin, Clemson, Virginia. So we're going to post videos dissecting and analyzing each team's approach to the conference championship game. And we will also delve, God willing, into the group of 5 championship games, especially the American, with the nice matchup, a rematch between Cincinnati and Memphis. I made a list. Of topics that we will hit in the off season, and it is ridiculously extensive. So that should be interesting to start to dive into some of these things. But man, I don't want to think past the season. Obviously, we need to cherish this. We are seeing our last few minutes of college football for the 2019 regular season, if you can believe it, right now. I don't know that I can go back to recognize the super chat. I'm on YouTube right now. I don't believe I can, but recognition will come. So thank you so much for anyone who gave in the super chat. I'm sorry that I missed. I got a couple on the screen. And yes, Joel Klatt and I would do a tremendous show. Thanks, David. I appreciate that. I respect Joel Klatt considerably. Some people had made comments in the live chat concerning other networks that I can't comment on. Somebody had a specific question wanting me to comment on a particular network coverage and so forth. And if anyone knows my background, you know that I can't comment. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. The Voice of College Football. Stay tuned tomorrow for the top 25 that actually makes sense, which has been extremely, I don't know if this is good or bad, but my top 25s the last 3 weeks has been razor close to the selection committee. So I produced that on Sunday, of course. They don't come out with their top 25 rankings until Tuesday night. And last week, they were almost identical. You had to get into the 20 to 25 range for there to be any kind of separation. I was within one spot of the selection committee. They must be getting awfully smart over there. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate it, all the comments. And if you had any comments, whether those be suggestions or requests or statements that you would like me to see or questions, please copy them in the live chat and then paste them into a comment section of any videos. And please, folks, while I still have 132 on the line, you can't imagine how much you would help the channel. And we know that people use Amazon. I heard a stat the other day that 64% of America owns an Amazon Prime account. I still don't believe that number. That's crazy, the monopoly that place has. But if you shop Amazon, of course, Christmas is coming, so tons of people are going to be out there shopping on Amazon. Please use the link that you can find in the description section of any of the videos, and that helps us build the channel. I hope you saw my predictions this week. They were pretty stellar. I don't have a final number because I'm still waiting for these final games, but yeah, the predictions have been really good in recent weeks. 11-6 against the spread last week, 58% for the season, and going up. So grab the link in the description section. And I don't even think that's the real selling point to our Patreon account, the Voice of College Football Community. It's that I offer to you an exclusive live stream each and every week. So per your request, you come on and talk college football with me. So not just from the call-in standpoint, but you actually come on here, we can talk college football. And I see this going forward, based on your suggestion, as a huge forum that we can have on just imagine this, catch my vision here. We have a live stream once a week for 90 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, where I bring you guys on and everybody gets to see everybody, and we kick around college football as like a panel discussion. I think it would be phenomenal. right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So you can get in on that by going to the link in the description section below of any of the videos. Not necessarily this one right now because there's nothing there right now. I need to copy and paste that in, but go to any of the videos, grab the link where it says Voice of College Football Community. You get my picks. Plus, again, I think this is much more valuable. We're building a community there as we are here. And I'm offering an exclusive live stream each week with you. So shop Amazon as well. Use the link. It's the same shopping experience. You don't spend an extra penny. Thank you so much. Top 25 that actually makes sense is coming out tomorrow. I'm going to run through. I'm going to give a soliloquy that Miami fans are going to hate, many of them, many of you, on the state of Miami football. And is Miami really relevant? As well as look at all the championship games this week. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will see you very soon. And I'm going to run through the last of the comments to make sure I didn't miss anything here. And I promise that the next live stream, I'll actually look like I've slept a little bit. Somebody just gave to the super chat. I want to acknowledge that person because, again, I apologize for the people that I've not acknowledged. Let's see if I can make it down there. JT Sports Fan, if you want to do this in a big way, let me know. If you want to do this in a big way, let me know. JT Sports, I don't know exactly what that means, but you know what you can do is all you need to do, any of you, if you have any suggestions or anything that you'd like to discuss with me, you go to my email right there, markrogerstv@gmail.com. That's easy to remember, markrogerstv@gmail.com. And so, JT Sports, please let me know what you're talking about. Just send me an email right there, JT Sports. Thank you so much for the contribution. I appreciate it. That is so kind of you. Think I can find it here. So again, JT Sports, markrogerstv@gmail.com. Joshua, yes, it was fun. A recent subscriber, I believe, a dog named Brutus. Named Brutus? Yeah, I got to leave out the M. Cheryl, yes, sponsors. People say all the time to me, and I've read this so many places. And of course, if you're a YouTuber, you know that there are YouTube videos talking about YouTube and how you grow on YouTube. I hear it time and time again that you only need 5,000 subscribers to be serious about getting sponsors. Well, we're way over that, so we need sponsors. And I do have specific sponsors like this Hero Soap Company. You see that in the description section below, and the fine people at the soap company. But real sponsors that are going to pay up front would be tremendous. So yes, if you know any companies that would sponsor us, please let me know and let them know the value we bring here. BW, thank you so much. I so greatly appreciate all the people out there that like the videos and also encourage others like BW does on a regular basis, and Jay Jobs and Cheryl and on and on and on. Many of you who remind everyone to hit the like button. YouTube loves that. It's in their algorithm. A lot of likes equals pushing it to suggested videos. Yes, a company sponsor. Think Coke, Pepsi, and probably it's not going to be one of those. But what did I see today that made me think of Dr. Pepper? Dr. Pepper is the official sponsor of college football, or they give themselves some kind of a. But man, if you want to be the official sponsor of college football, right? Who does more college football than me? I will leave the network name off of this next comment, but I found it interesting. So I'm watching Alabama, Auburn, and Minnesota, Wisconsin at the same time. I'm typically watching 3 games at the same time. David, yes, we're steamrolling. Thank you. David, tremendous supporter and encourager, and has provided me with so much contribution and help and instruction and so forth. Thank you, David. I'm watching these games, and I'm on YouTube for a particular reason, and I see a live stream from a major entity. That's all I'll say, from a major entity. So I just click on it. They're doing a live stream. They had a analyst on that I believe 90% of you would know from television. And they had been on for 22 minutes. And do you know how many people they had online watching this live stream? A major company. They had 39 people watching. And I thought, my goodness. I did a live stream the other night, and I'm not bragging about these numbers at all because my numbers aren't large, but I did a live stream the other night. I came home from work and I jumped on. It was 3:30 in the morning and I had 85 people on here. And I thought, my goodness, with that kind of money and backing and everything that entity has, that would actually give me a nice set and we could do the call-ins the right way and the whole deal. Oh, my word. Okay. All right. Who else? Anybody else here? I need a business plan. I need a business plan from you and Uncle Lou. Uncle Lou is tremendous. I'm a big fan. Seabass85. This is the first time I've ever seen your handle. I hope Mark gets all the sponsors I won't use as block on his videos. Well, we'll take the first comment. Thank you so much, Seabass. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. JT Sports Fan, find me. Again, Mark Rogers TV at Gmail. JT Sports Fan, you can find me right there. All right, yes, let's all listen to BW on your way out. And if you've got like 3 minutes, just go down like the last 10 videos and just go like, like. That would make my day. Thank you so much, everyone. We've got so much work to do in the next few weeks and really in the next like 6 weeks, of course. Consider this. On National Signing Day, which is December 18th, I will be here all day on December 18th, cranking out recruiting and National Signing Day analysis all day. And then Thursday night as well. Once the bowl bids come out, of course, I'm going to have much to say about the college football playoff selections. And then the bowl bids are going to come out that night. And this is my aim for every bowl selection. I'm going to do a video, of course, previewing the game at some point, the 2019-2020 matchup, but also produce a video in which I look at the history of that bowl game. I'm also going to look at the history of the series between those two teams. So 3 videos at least per bowl game. And again, we will completely break down and maybe tear apart, and maybe I'll be lifting up tables and throwing them over because I will be so annoyed and irritated with the college football playoff selection committee's 4 teams, or maybe not. Maybe I'll say, hey, they did the best they could and it was pretty cut and dry, and that's what way it is. But if 2016, 17, and 18 is any indication, I might be turning tables over and ranting and raving for 2 weeks nonstop and driving you nuts. Also, of course, we're going to have coaches firing. So Barry Odom is the first of several, I'm sure. We typically have about 10 to 12 coaches get axed. That's Sunday after the conference championship game. So we will stay on top of that. I've reached out to a few Missouri people to comment on Odom's tenure here, and then also to give us some perspective on where Missouri is looking for its next head coach. So all the coaching vacancies will be on top of that as well. And on and on and on and on and on. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.